All right, which one are we doing? It says we're going to be doing build a reusable mega nav bar. This is in the React module for freeCodeCamp. So that's what we're doing. And if this is your first time watching, my name's Rob. I'm a coding instructor for PreCodeCamp, and where we are going through some of these modules that freeCodeCamp offers, and we're coming at it from an instructor point of view. So if you are looking to learn or looking to follow along with us, then you came to the right channel. So you want to make sure that you subscribe, so that way you're going to be notified for any future videos that we're making, especially in this series, if you care to learn about it. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. And don't forget, hit that like button, please. All right, let's go see what we're building with this mega nav bar. So as always, what I like to do here is just go real quick, do a brief overview. You're going to see that each one of these videos that we make, they're kind of done with it being chaptered down below of what step we're actually on. And that way you are able to move around. But like I told you earlier in the introduction, I recommend that you don't skip around, watch the video in the entirety, especially if you are just learning this, because React, it is a really neat idea. It's a neat concept, and I use it all the time. I love React, and I use React Native for mobile apps. So if you can understand React and build out web pages and stuff with it, then it's a very easy transition if you are looking to go into the mobile space with React. And this is the very first lab or workshop that they currently have based upon the time of this recording. And as always, they may update some more steps. They may come out with more React stuff. So just know that these steps may not line up exactly when you are going through them, but we're going to go through it and we're going to finish this chapter. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Looks like this is what we are going to be making here. A nice little hover effect. I did take a look at some of the pre-code that it kind of has with it, and let's take a look at it also as we're going through this. So it looks like we have a couple files that we are going to be working with. This is the index.jsx file that we're going to be writing our code in. However, it does have some additional coding that's already pre-coded for us. And this is almost like boilerplate code that they gave us here for the index.html. It has a bunch of stuff that you may not know, but the real important part here is that they are importing this function that we're going to be creating here and bringing it to this page. So later on, when we are coding in the index.jsx file, then it's going to be brought to our preview window here. And so that's how that magic is going to work. And then it also looks like the styles.css is done for us as well. So we're not going to have to do any styling, and we're just going to be making sure that we are utilizing the class names and maybe IDs that they already have in here. So it doesn't look like too much from us that is really needed, because the sole focus is getting a React component to kind of display. So anyways, let's go ahead and dive into step number 1 here. I'm going to get rid of the index.html. And that way we're just presented with step 1. From my understanding, I don't know if freeCodeCamp is working more generously with this section at all, because it does look like it is pretty bare boned as far as the information that you get from React. And so I am going to try to bring in some documentation, and that way we can kind of see what are we talking about when we are talking about React and working with React, and why is it that we need a function and so on. So anyways, it says step 1 here. In this workshop, you're going to be practicing with React functional components. And so just real quick, with React has functional components. We also have class components. And recently there's been a shift towards, hey, let's stay away from utilizing classes. And when we taught this in the coding classroom, we did introduce classes, just because you may see that if you end up going to a job and they have some legacy React code. So some still use class-based functions. But for learning this, and especially starting out, functional React components are the key to learning, and you can always pick up classes later. It says all the CSS has been provided for you, so that way we can just focus on the nav bar. That's exactly what I just got done saying of what they're doing. And we want to start off with defining the actual nav bar functional component. And so they kind of give you the name of the function that we need to have for this. And one of the things that is going to be a little unique when it comes to making these React components is the naming convention, right? It says here, make sure that you utilize the named export when you are exporting the component. And traditionally, components that are made with React, they're going to have the very first letter be capital. And it is required for your React project to work, not only because on their index.html file, they named it specifically, but from the programming point of view, when you are making your own React project, that is going to be the naming convention is it's going to be Pascal casing, which is the very first letter is capitalized and then everything else is camel cased. So in this example here, it says that here is an example of an exported function. And it just gives a real quick export function multiply, and then it has 2 parameters on here. And again, I'm assuming that you already know some JavaScript and functions. And so what we're going to do down here in order to get this to work, we're just going to do export, and then we need to have that name of function. And then we want the function name. And since this is a component, we want navbar. And then we want to have that left and right parentheses and then the curly brackets. And that is all that this step is asking for, is just create this simple little export. So that's one of the things that you want to make sure that you do with all your React components that you're wanting to bring in to the page, is you always need to have this export statement up here. And then we have the function. A little later on, we're going to learn a little bit more of what a functional component looks like and what that JSX looks like. Okay, because notice that file type up here. This isn't a normal JavaScript file. It's a JSX file. So let's go ahead and check our code. There we go. We got the congratulations. We're moving on to the next lesson. All right, so we're on step number 2 in building a reusable mega nav bar for freeCodeCamp. And notice already that it did kind of, when we hit that next button, it changed our normal function component that we did into an arrow function, but it doesn't take away anything that you have done. And if you're familiar with JavaScript, you understand the complexities of what's the difference between a function and an arrow function. I'm not going to go over that in this video here, but I did want to bring that up as like, hey, we typed out function. Why don't we see that here? Well, this is an arrow function up here. Okay. So now it tells us, as far as the instruction goes, hey, it's time to build out this navbar component utilizing JSX. You've learned in the previous lectures that JSX is a syntax extension for JavaScript that allows us to write HTML-like code within JavaScript, making it easier to create and manage the React components. And here's an example of what a JSX component looks like. And let's go ahead and break this down just a little bit here and maybe do a little bit of compare and contrast and show you exactly what we are looking to get out of this here. So again, this is a functional component. Notice that it is a function and it has a return statement. And what goes inside here, I always tell the students, is that when we have a return statement on here, we need to make sure that we are returning a single JSX element. And it looks like a bunch of HTML. It is true. But the thing that I wanted to bring your attention to in here is we have a very top div right here. And then we also have the closing part of that div down here. And so whenever we are doing anything with React, anything inside, it needs to be enclosed with a single React element. And we can take a look at this. I went ahead and went to the documentation here for React. And it says on here that React apps are made out of components. A component is a piece of UI or user interface that has its own logic and appearance. A component can be as small as a button or as large as an entire website. And you can see here that we have a function, we have a return, and notice that we have this return statement and it's just a single JSX element. Okay. One of the things that I also do in the classroom is like, well, what if we wanted to do more things Well, if you want to do more, then you need to wrap it in something like this, a div, okay? And you can see here that this thing is wrapping multiple things inside of it, but it all has the idea, this concept of returning a single JSX element. And the more that you practice, the more that you do, you're going to get used to utilizing those terms and talking about them and seeing how are we working with these components. So it says inside the navbar component, we need to return a nav element. So again, that is a single JSX element, and it looks just like HTML. It's going to look weird putting that inside of our JSX here. So down on line 2, I'm going to type the words return. I'm going to get rid of that back tick here and do return. And again, we want to return a single element. That can be an H1, that can be a nav, that can be a div, but that's all that it's wanting right now is this right here. And it says inside the nav component, it must return a nav element. Make sure that the class name that we give it is navbar. Now, this is something unique because we're dealing with a JavaScript file. In order to put a class on here, if this was normal HTML, we would put class, and then we would put the equal sign, and then give it a class name here of navbar. But we're not dealing with an HTML page, and that is why we need to modify this class and give it a class name, and that needs to be camel cased. Otherwise, this is not going to work. That looks like exactly what we need to do. Traditionally, we don't need to put the parentheses on there unless we are having multiple lines. But since we're putting it all on one line, we should not need the parentheses on here. So let's go ahead and check our code. We got the congratulations, and we're ready for the next step. So in this step here, step number 3, it says, hey, inside the nav section, that nav element, go ahead and create a UL with 3 list items in there. And so that's what we're going to do. Now, again, we're going to have to take a look at this, and I wish there was a way to maybe like hide the instructions, because it might not be as obvious that we are inside of the function. We are also inside of our element here of navigation, of the nav element. And that's where it wants us to put the code in here. So we want to do an unordered list. And I'm always a big advocate as soon as you type in that unordered list or an element, make sure that we close it off. And that way it's just going to save us some pain later. Next is I'm going to hit the enter key a couple times, and this is where we want our LIs. Now, it doesn't tell us what we want to put in there. And I don't know if we just want to put test1 just so that we can see it populate in here. And I'm just going to grab this here, and we'll do another one, and then we'll do one more, and then we'll just update this so that way we can see it and we can kind of talk about it. And let me move the picture here. We have the test1, test2, test3. Again, all this stuff is showing up because of the CSS that is already done for us. And right here, we are still within that navigation element. We are still within the same return. And you might be asking yourself, how is this possible with React? Because I thought we could only return one thing. Well, we are still only returning one element. And usually if I'm in like Visual Studio Code, for example, we have these little carets that we can close on here, and we're able to show you that, hey, we are still in a single JSX element, and it will yell at you if you try to put something outside of it. And I don't know if it's set up that way to throw some errors. It looks like it is. Let me go ahead and show you the error page here. You can also see it's all in red. And so, you know, if I try to put code outside of the navigation or outside of a single JSX element, it's going to scream at me and tell me, hey, there's something wrong going on here. So let me go ahead and undo that. And we have our normal navigation up here. This should complete step number 3. Let's see if that's what it wanted. There we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next step. All right. So step number 4 in building a reusable mega navbar. FreeCodeCamp here is having us go into each one of these LIs and give a class name here of nav item. Okay, so again, it's giving us more clues here with the camel casing of class name. And if I was doing this in class, I would ask the student, why do we have to call it class name rather than class? And hopefully we remember why we had to do that. And so I'm just going to come in here. We're going to do a class name. We're going to set that equal to nav item. And again, we can copy and paste this again a couple more times. We're not going to see anything on the other side, but this does complete our step here on what we would like to do. So we have the 3 on there. They got the class name. They each have the nav item. Let's go and check our code. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next step here. All right, so step number 5 in building a reusable mega nav bar with freeCodeCamp. It says here we want to go ahead and create an anchor tag. We want to make sure that anchor tag has an H, and the attribute is going to have the hashtag, and then the text is going to be dashboard. So again, all this stuff that we're doing right now should be common knowledge to everyone because you've already experienced HTML. And so to make an anchor tag, that's going to be an A. Again, we're going to close things off so that way we don't forget. And then we can come back in here and add in the attributes. So the H, it says it wants it to be the hashtag. And then inside here, it wants dashboard. And so now we can see now with the nav item as the class name, we can come in here and we get the purple hover effect, which is good. All right, I think that is it for this step. Let's go ahead and check our code. There we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next step. Step number 6, it says create another anchor tag inside of the LI. Give it the H of hashtag. This one's going to be widgets. Since we've already did the first one, I'm just going to paste it in here and then modify. So instead of dashboards, we want to have widgets. Here we go. And let's go ahead and check our code. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next step here. So nothing new React-wise to kind of learn here from it. We've already done an example of it. And the thing that we want to just keep in mind that we're still all inside of a single JSX export. Okay, so step number 7 here, it says that the third list item, go ahead and create a button element. So let's do that. And I'm going to close it off. And inside of the button, it wants us to put the word apps. And here, for one of the attributes, it wants the aria expanded, and it wants that set to false. And I'm going to go ahead and fix this. It looks like I didn't copy the A over there. And I believe that is what it is wanting. Let's go ahead and check our code. And again, if you wanted to know what the aria expanded attribute does, you can read it down there at the bottom. And it looks like we are good to go. All right, moving on to the next step here. So step number 8 in building a reusable mega nav bar with freeCodeCamp, it tells us that, hey, we're still inside this L element that we see up here on line 11. And it wants us to create another unordered list element. And we want to give it a class name of Submenu and also give it an aria label and set that equal to apps. So a lot of stuff here, but we're going to take it one by one. So immediately I'm just going to create that unordered list. I'm going to follow that up with the attributes that it wants. The class name, we want to set that equal to Submenu. And then for the aria label, for the screen readers, this is going to be for it will say the apps. So there we go. I think that's all that it wants. Let's go ahead and check our code here. There we go. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next step. All right, so step number 9, it says create 3 new list items inside of our unordered list submenu element that we just got done creating. And so what it's wanting us to do here is it just wants an LI. Again, I'm just opening and closing them. And if we want, we can put sub in here, just so that way we can see it. You can see that it's starting to fill in with that drop down. And I'm going to paste that 2 more times. And so hovering, we see the 3 subs there. Okay. All right, let's go and check our code. Congratulations. We're moving on to the next step. So step number 10, it tells us that inside each one of these list items, it wants an anchor element. Okay. So again, I'm just doing the opening and closing of the anchor element, and it wants the href to be set to the hashtag. So I'm going to do href, and I'm going to set that equal to the hashtag. There we go. And now I can just copy and paste this 2 more times, and there we go. Still not going to see anything in it. It removed what we had before, which is fine, but it's going to get added here shortly. So let's check our code. Congratulations, we're moving on to the next step. To finish things up, let's go ahead and set the text of the very first one here to calendar, then it wants chat, and then it wants the email. So let's do that. So we'll do chat or to calendar first, and then chat, and then email. And then we should be able to see that in the drop-down menu here. Makes that look nice and pretty for the navigational menu. All right, let's go ahead and check our code. All right, it says that with that, our mega navbar is complete. All right, so what did we learn, right? If you made it this far, what did you learn? And the thing that I would probably pick up on is we learned that these are functional components. The functional components return a single JSX element, that you can have multiple elements within there that looks just like HTML, but it needs to return a single JSX element. We also learned that the keyword class is protected in JavaScript, which is why we have to utilize class names. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you subscribe. Put it down in the comment if this video helped you out. I love seeing the comments and being able to interact with every single one of you that makes a posting. Okay, so we'll see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching. Take care.